This is the Lindsay Stafford Show.
All right, welcome back to the Lindsay Stafford Show. We are continuing our series on failing forward, failing in business. Failing doesn't mean you're a failure, but you might have failures. And so we're going to talk about that. We are lifting the hood, so to say, on failing in business. What I found is that people don't like to talk about their failures unless it's really kind of a forced topic, right? And so there are entrepreneurs that don't want to talk about times that they failed because they're afraid to bring it up, or it has bad memories, or it's associated with them feeling like a failure. And so this series is to just open up and share all the things that you do and you fail in business. I could probably produce my own show and talk about my own failures for hours and hours, but we'll make it more fun by bringing other people on. And so today I have my friend Lori here, owner of Bell and Bottle. I'm going to let her do her full introduction. Not full disclosure, we had a wine tasting last night together, and the wine is amazing that she has. So very excited to have you here and talk about your business and failing as a business owner at times. But first, can you tell us a little bit about you and your business?
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. I'm excited to be here today. So Bell and Bottle began in 2016 in Washington State. So I was working for a chef, and inside the community there was about, I think at the time there's over 100 wineries locally, like right around us. So we did a lot of dinners and events with wine. And so I got to kind of coordinate all of those pieces and kind of got the wine bug from that. And so when I left the restaurant in 2016, I decided to start my own company so that I could continue to work with all of the great boutique producers that were, in my backyard right there in Washington, but also continue to bring to the people that live near me the exposure to what I was able to get at the restaurant, which is working with all of importers and, small boutique producers all around the world. So that's how we started. And then in 2022, we have family here in Tennessee. So we decided to move the business and the family here. So we still run the wine company out of Washington State. And then here in Tennessee, we're actively looking for our permanent home here for the business, and then doing events and things as well.
Awesome. How did you tell us? I want to know, I know how it started. I know a little bit more than listeners do, but I also want to hear the concept. Tell us about what Bell and Bottle does.
So Bell and Bottle is a modern wine brand, and we really focus on kind of bringing the authenticity and intentionality to wine. So when you're drinking at home, you can feel like you're supporting boutique family and female-led projects. And we also have a nonprofit arm that I started that's called Bell and Bottle Foundation, and that is empowering female entrepreneurs. So a lot of the projects that we do and some of the wine we have, 30% of the proceeds will go into the foundation so that we can kind of carry what we're focusing on with wine into a little bit broader scope of food, hospitality, farmers, things like that.
Oh, that's cool. What are some of the things you've been able to do through the foundation?
So we just launched the foundation in 2022, right when we were moving. We got the nonprofit certification. And so the first thing that we did was host a wine awards. And we did all female judges and really focused on, again, kind of getting that concept of looking at the small producers, letting women taste it, and then having that expertise show through. And so as I was doing the interviews for the women who are going to be the judges for that, I realized, the scope of, and these were a lot of women that I already had relationships with and knew pretty well, and just seeing their resumes that they submitted, I was just really blown away by all of the work that they had put into their career and their expertise. And so that's kind of where we kind of broadened it out from there to really be able to kind of shine light on women and help support them through their entrepreneurship.
Oh, that's amazing. I love the intentionality behind that. And starting a nonprofit is not an easy task to do. I'm in the middle of doing it right now. And it's not a one-stop kind of process. It's a lot. There's a lot that's involved. So I'm sure it took a while to make that come to life too.
Yeah. And I think it's definitely evolving. And so as, I worked on some of that, again, like thinking about the conversation last night, it was like, oh, by the way, tomorrow's all about failure.
Yeah.
So as I was thinking last night and this morning, yeah, I was like, okay, great. No, so as I was thinking about it, I think part of it too is like, especially with the foundation, it doesn't feel like a failure, but it's definitely like huge learning curves. And so probably, in there, I would call them mini failures. But I think over the course of so many years of being an entrepreneur, my brain's kind of tuned out to like not call it a failure, but just really look at, I could have done this better and this is how we're going to do it next time. And so I think with the nonprofit, it definitely adds a whole other aspect to that and then juggling between the two of those. But I'm really committed to, the mission of the foundation, and that really drives even the rest of my business to really get that to be successful.
Yeah. And you and I are in a kind of a mastermind group, I guess, together that you actually started. And I remember telling your husband, you just did such a fantastic job at, you go to these networking events or mastermind, and it's like, how intentional is it going to be? And are we going to have a purpose other than just talk to people? And I think you have such intentionality with the way that you started. That made me go, oh, I'm really glad I am a part of this. I want to continue on this. So I love that the women and I say that because it's all women, and all the conversations we have through that group is all centered around female entrepreneurs and supporting each other in the industry. So I love that. Okay. So let's talk about failure. Business is successful, but that doesn't mean you got there without failing. So, and we're failing every day at certain things, right? We have failures every day. So what is a learning opportunity you had a time that you failed?
Well, I think the biggest one that I thought of when we were talking after last night was really kind of what I'm just working through right now is, when we moved from Washington to Tennessee, I basically blew up a big part of my business. Part of it definitely carries, and I'm able to continue doing that with the wine club and being able to ship across country. So that piece is there. But the part that I, kind of was evaluating last night and this morning is really, I gave up a lot of, by starting over in a new space, I gave up all of my personal relationships and all of the kind of personal touches or the relationship building. And so what I did when I got here, and this is, I think, the failure and the aha moment that we've been working through, is that I just said, okay, well, if my business is running from Washington, I have to sit at home on my computer and run my business because my business is now e-commerce and now this is my job. And that's really not what I like at all. Mm-hmm. And so it's really been difficult because it's hard. And when it's hard and you don't like it and it's not a good fit for your personality, it makes it, exponentially difficult. And so as I've worked through, this past year, and I think this was really the first meeting that you and I had was just, the people that I've hired to do things for me online is just fail after fail after fail. And to me, it's, like no sleep and money. I could have just driven down the road and handed it out to somebody and felt better about it. And so, doing the research and then thinking that I've asked the right questions the next time and finding another group and doing this. And I feel like I'm giving away my power. And so what I've done this past year between, BNI and then what we talked about is really just taking back that power and bringing it back to the part that I like, which is building the relationships and talking to people and being out in the community. And so for 2025, the goal really for marketing has now been the growth locally here and how can I impact that personally. And again, okay, I'm not giving that to anybody else anymore. That's mine and I'm going to own it. And so, it's starting to work, but it's really just barely starting to work right now. Like it takes time to do that. And so I think that's something that, it feels bad when you're like, you've had more success before and then you keep trying things and things aren't working but it's like, you got to just keep, every day it's like, get up, get back on the mat. And, even if you need to give yourself those days of like, today I just have to have a break and I'm not going to get up, I'm going to do that. But then the next day you got to go.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's so fascinating. We have a mutual friend that is kind of going through the same thing, that relocated and is building her practice here in Tennessee from where she was before in California. And we've all been there. I think as you get older and more seasoned in life, you get to a place where you have to start over making friends and networking and getting to know people. And I've moved a lot my whole life. So for me, that part has always come very naturally. I mean, I think my husband and I counted, we have had like something like 9 houses together in the 19 years. Like it's ridiculous. Oh. How much we've moved and I moved a lot as a kid. So it was part of me continuing to grow as a person and collect friends along the way, building this network and this team of people. But when you do it as an adult, and now I've lived in the same place now for almost 10 years, so I haven't done it in a long time, but you do reinvent yourself as you change courses and you change careers and you build your network differently. That is a really self-reflecting time when you are having to build relationships to build a business, because you're reflecting constantly. You look in the mirror differently. How do I look today? Am I presenting myself well? How did that conversation go? Am I saying the right things? Am I going in with intention? I'm going to share a networking tip 101 here. I have a coaching client that I met with, and she had a networking event coming up that night. And I said, well, what are you doing there? What's your plan? And she said, oh, I'm going to go. I'm like, that's great, but like, what are we doing? And so this is what you need to do. You need to download your if I use Popl, P-O-P-L, not paid for that, but that's what I use, a virtual business card, because you can set it up to collect information and then give your information. It's got all your links on it. I think it's free. I don't think we pay for it. We might, but I don't manage all the subscriptions, but have that ready. And then I want you to go make 10 connections. Go get 10 people. Don't set up meetings with 10 people. Go make 10 connections that you can add to your mailing list, that you can start conversations with, that you can put in your portfolio of people that you want to circle back with. And today or yesterday, she texted me and said, I got to tell you, that was like the best advice. I went in with intention. Like I was going to meet 10 people. I wasn't stuck in a conversation with one person. I had, plans, but you have to do these things when you're growing and changing and you're starting over. And before, probably in California, or not in California, in Washington, you didn't have to think about it. You went and you knew people and you conversed and you had conversations and you just did it. But when you start over, it's so self-reflecting, and then you're hard on yourself, right? I mean, I don't know. Do you feel that way? Because when I have to go into new places, I'm like, okay, but am I doing the right thing? And you can kind of be really critical on yourself, and that can feel like you're failing in those moments.
Yeah, I think so. And I think I like the intentionality part. And I think just kind of, I have to just be a little bit bigger than myself too for those, like most people are not like, oh yay, I get to go meet 200 strangers, right? It's like, that's not an exciting thing for them. So while I enjoy meeting people and I enjoy talking to them, it's always still a little bit of, that nerve wracking. And then did I mumble, did I take too long to explain, was somebody buzzing a timer because I took too long, or
only at BNI,
or were they confused by what I said? So just thinking about like, how can you be very clear and intentional, even with just those, like, what are you saying? And, speaking of BNI, I think that's one of the things that's been great for me is just, it's like every time you have 30 seconds. And so you're really trying to like, how do I maximize this 30 seconds? And how can I say something maybe a little differently this time that catches somebody different than before, because maybe they didn't understand the other way I said it. So I'm going to present it differently, and that might attract somebody.
How'd you feel when was this your first BNI group? Mm-hmm. It's the first one I joined. I had been to several. I've now been in, going on 3 years here. But I remember being like the first time I had to do my 30 seconds being like, this is so uncomfortable and so awkward. We have a really big BNI group for listeners. We are in the largest one in Tennessee, probably one of the largest in the country and in the region for sure. there's like 70 something members and we've always got like 20 or 30 guests. So you're standing up in front of 100 people. And I don't know about you, but it hits differently when it's like your peers versus, I mean, I've done live TV and I could do live TV, no problem. I can do this. This doesn't bother me. But standing up in a room, in the beginning, at least, I remember being very intimidated by it and feeling like I was a failure. Like, what credibility do I have to stand in front of this room? And we talk about this a lot in this series, but imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. When you're going through those moments, you can have imposter syndrome where you might have already had success, but not here. So then you're like, well, am I good enough to do that? You know, have those thoughts running through your head.
Yeah. And I think that the funny thing is because I sell wine, it's like, you know, at a core base is an easy like icebreaker of like, hi, you're going to want to know me because I have wine, you know? And so I think keeping that in mind and being a little more lighthearted about it helps me in not being like so serious about it and trying, you know, worrying too much or having anxiety about that or whatever. But yeah, definitely. I think in a group like that, especially when there's some people in there that you feel like, you know, they're just so practiced with their 30 seconds that it's just like this easy thing. And I'm always like, okay, what am I going to say today? Can I be funny? Am I like, you know, like,
do I have it in me?
What is the thing in there that it's like, you know, you're funny and witty and whatever with friends, but then you get in front of a group and you kind of get that like deer in the headlights. Yeah. And it's like, oh my gosh, I forgot what I was going to say. So,
yeah. You got to stay in your lane. I'm not funny. Like if I'm funny, it's because I'm making mistakes. I'm not like a funny person. And so I don't try to be funny. Yeah. I just I'll leave the funny to Jim and, you know, whoever else is there that's actually funny. It's not me. And I think that's part of it too, is just accepting who you are and being okay with just being who you are. And you don't have to be like everybody else. Yeah. But that's a hard thing to get to.
Yeah. And I think just like anything, right? It's like practice. And I think that's one of the things with, you know, all of this, you know, again, I was kind of just thinking through different things of, you know, what do I consider, you know, what's a failure? What's a pivot? What's this? And, you know, with all of the social media stuff, you know, everyone, you know, including me, it's like, oh, I don't want to be on video. And I just really pushed away from it for so long because I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm not good at it. And then you watch some of this stuff and they're like, hey, by the way, nobody's good at this stuff at first, you know, or very few. And like, you just have to keep doing it. And now, you know, I had to do a video last year for a crowdfunding campaign. And I sat at the desk for like 4 hours, like re-recording this thing. And so now I'm like, when I have to do something where I just do that recording, I don't care. It's not perfect. Yeah. And it's not, you know, oh my God, this is really going to just go viral and whatever. But I shot it. I got the point across I needed to make and it's done. And I just move on instead of like fretting about it. Yeah. Never watch your own stuff.
Yeah. Done is better than perfect is one of my favorite philosophies. And sometimes perfect gets in the way of good. Yeah. Or perfect gets in the way of done or good enough. And if you just adopt the philosophy of done is better than perfect. If I go to be a BNI group as a guest and I stand up and talk in front of people, that's better than not going at all. Even if I don't say the best thing, it's better than not going. But preparation is also something that's important. But, you know, failing is something we do over and over again. And we talked about, I just did an episode with another BNI member that we both know, Ben, and we talk about failing forward, but learning from your mistakes and looking back and saying, what would I do differently? And I think I personally built that habit into everything I do. It's always, how could I do better? What should I do differently? You know, I presented at BNI this week and I had not practiced the presentation for time. And afterwards I was like, well, dang, I really how am I making such a novice mistake? I know better than to go on stage and not have practiced. But I had rehearsed it in my head. I, knew my slides, but I hadn't timed it. And so I felt like it was off. And nobody else probably thought anything of it except me, because we are our own worst critic. But we have to constantly be learning and looking for now I know I've got to put on my calendar, because we only do it once every 6 months or something. Yeah. So it's not something you're presenting all the time where you would be practicing. I always talk about practicing your craft. If you're a salesperson, you should practice your spiel on a regular basis, not just in front of people, but outside of it so you can hear it and get better at it. This isn't something I would really be practicing for. It's very BNI specific, but I will make sure that I do it next time, that I give myself an hour to stand up and time it and do it several times to make sure I get it right. So we have to constantly be looking and know our weak spots. Like I know that I tend to be like, I can wing it, and I usually can, but I also could do a lot better if I don't do that.
Yeah. Well, and I will say that as I just recorded something the other day, like that may be something where you could just like sit in front of the computer with the recorder.
Yeah.
Because it like tracked everything for me, and I knew whatever this thing that I was doing, I had to have it under 90 seconds.
Yeah.
And so I had to keep doing it until I fixed it. And then I did a little editing, but yeah, it was like one of those where you just kind of like, okay, that was way too long. Okay. Shorten it and then get it close and just kind of work through.
Yeah.
So
you got to have time to be able to execute well for things. And sometimes we're not good at giving ourselves time to execute. So you talked about failing or feeling like a failure or feeling like you were failing as you came here and didn't put your energy into your strength zone. You put it into what you thought you needed to do.
mm-hmm.
And I also talk about in a business, there really needs to be visionary, executor, and operator. 3 people. And most of the time when we start, we're wearing all 3 of those hats. So we can do all of them, but it's a matter of finding which one fits us best. And a lot of times as the founder, it's the visionary to keep the vision alive. And I know some of the things you have coming down the pipeline, and I'm so excited for you with what's growing. But if you can't stay in that strength zone of being a visionary, talking to people, getting out there, putting the company name out there, getting fresh new ideas, and you get too stuck in operating and executing, then the business doesn't grow. Yeah. So you got kind of stuck in the operator executor.
Well, but I think the strange thing in this scenario is that I was trying to not be the operator by hiring people.
Yeah.
And then that wasn't fulfilling, the services or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, they weren't doing their job. And so then I'm back taking that over again or dealing with it. And so like as I've tried, again, I look at it like, because this has been a big thing for me with that move is, to not have it feel like a failure is, I really started almost just like a new startup, right?
Yeah.
Like I had a little, I had what was kind of residual going, but in order to keep that going, it needs to grow, which was supposed to be these outside hires. And that has failed at the same time while I'm here trying to basically do a new startup almost. Right. And so that's the part where I have to give myself some grace. And is like, no, this is how it looks. This is how it feels. And it's supposed to be hard or everybody would be doing this. Right. So it's like, I'm doing that. And so I think the other piece that I think about is with that failure of outsourcing the operations portion, as you're talking about it, is when I look back and say, okay, why has this happened 3-4 times? Now it's, okay, the failure is, what am I missing when I'm picking these hires and what do I need to do differently? And so looking at, what have I not been holding them accountable to correctly? How do I need to restructure these contracts?
Yeah.
How do I need to have different ways to find these resources? And I think that's where I'm focusing right now, as it goes forward. Like right now, I'm not going to go hire somebody else to do that. I'm focusing on here, which is, that part of me being in control of that. And then as I am ready to do that, then we say, okay, now I've got additional resources. So whether it's, go to you and say, okay, can you help me find these operators, but working on that in a different way to not kind of repeat the same insanity.
It's so interesting you bring it up, because I found this in myself too, and Ben and I just talked about this as we talked about video and what he does, that I have to constantly ask myself, how clear am I being about what I want and expect? Am I clearly defining what success looks like in this role for someone? And I think that is a big opportunity for visionaries, myself included, because we live here. Like, this is my vision. Now go bring it to life. Well, when you're hiring someone for a job, they are not likely to have the same mentality as you. And so they need to know exactly what their job description is, what their measurables are, and what success looks like, what the lead and lag measurables are. What does success look like for them in their role? And I have found that pulling back and getting really specific with that has helped me to see success, where when I will find that I asked my team individually and collectively sometimes, does that make sense? Tell me what you heard me say. Tell me what your job is. But also pulling it back and going, here's what success this week looks like. This is your goal this week. This is, for someone who's, let's say, when I'm a project manager in the field doing something, working with the business that we're contracted with, this is what your role is this week, whether it's, determine this or execute this, whatever it is. This is what next, at the end of the week, when we have the conversation, this is what we're going to be looking for. And that is really hard to do, to slow yourself down enough to get clear on what you're asking for and what success looks like with other people, because we're moving so fast as visionaries and we kind of expect people to read our minds. So we have to get good with systems and job descriptions, measurables, lead and lag indicators, and making sure that that's clearly articulated. And for me, part of that came with hiring someone to do operations, to be able to say, okay, Lindsay, I hear you, but I need that to be put into something I can hire someone to do. So let's nail that down, right? It's about knowing that we can't do it ourselves and we've got to have somebody else to help us. We can, but it's not as clear.
Yeah. And I think that the interesting thing, I guess, I was going to say funny. It's not funny, but the interesting thing probably ironic, is like what I had done before in other roles was really be like that director of operations. And I'm very good at that, except I'm not very good at it with mine. And
the irony.
And I think it goes back to what you're saying is like you're working at different levels and really trying to handle all of these pieces. But then I feel like I almost need like a sweeper of like, here's all this stuff and I can get it to a certain point. And then I just need somebody to kind of like finish it over, put it over the finish line. Yeah. And I think that would probably be the best. So that's kind of what I've been evaluating lately is like what really is going to be the best bang for the buck is not really, I don't need this expert or this expert, individually, just
you need an executor.
Somebody who can just finish all of these things. Yeah. So.
Well, operator and an executor. And it's like, well, you kind of need all three. So can you find someone that can maybe do both for now, or two part-time people? I love part-time roles. I love hiring for part-time roles. I think one of the things we do really well at Stafford Solutions is look for how can we get somebody that has a very specific, and we were able to be a who for a lot of women by providing, not that we won't work with men, I do all the time, but a lot of women on the team that can work 5 hours a week or 8 hours a week. And it's a perfect job for them. It's what they're living in their strength zone. They have flexible hours. We are always about autonomy and family first, and putting your priorities first. And one of them needs to be work, but it's not everything. And that is sometimes not what business owners consider. They think I got to hire a full-time person. I'm not ready for that. And it's like, not really in today's world. You can hire people to do very small parts of your business. Let them live in their strength zone. And by the way, if you have turnover and it's only one person who only is doing a small portion, and you've written standard operating procedures for their job, it doesn't really hurt you if it turns. It might, but it's not going to be, you're not going to fail because of it. It might be a learning experience.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes business owners forget that they have that opportunity to leverage people for just a small portion of what they're doing.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. And I agree that that's, a good way. And I think, again, going back to like, from my standpoint is looking at what is that process to get to that person and, finding a reliable resource to do that. And on a side note, I just wanted to tell you that Lindsay's at the EIC
Entrepreneurial Innovation Center.
With my son is there. And we went to Jenny's ice cream. This last week was my birthday. So we went for ice cream for my birthday, and we're standing in line, and they had like a flavor or some special of the month. And so I ordered, it was like a strawberry something shortcake parfait. And so the kid went to make it, and Griffin goes, "Mom, look, we've been learning about standard operating procedure, and they have a thing back there and he's using it to make your dessert. And so I was like, that was just so funny that
I love that.
I was like, oh, that's great. I'm glad they're teaching you that. So anyway, so we saw a practical application
Yeah,
at
that's
the ice
cool.
cream store.
That's so cool. Yeah. SOPs. I mean, the EIC, I'm a huge advocate for the Entrepreneurial Innovation Center and what we're doing with the hub. And my next guest today is someone we're on the board together for this new part of what we're doing for the hub and the EIC. It's kind of groundbreaking and really cool. But yes. So back to SOPs and making sure that you've got those things in place and hiring and leveraging a little bit of time from certain people can build a really successful business. And it can be hard to take that leap. But once you have started to do it, and there's a lot of resources out there to help with hiring and creating job descriptions, and you can use AI to do a ton of that work for you. But it is a difference maker. And when you free yourself up to do what you're best at, you end up thriving and being able to continue to grow the company.
Well, and I think one of the things that it just kind of came to me while you were talking there is when I've looked at what has been set up in the past from a contract standpoint, I feel like where I'm getting, not the benefit. I'm trying to be nice about the word, but the contract is always, okay, we have this contract and every month we're doing this on retainer.
Yeah.
And then that's when, instead of it being, these are the exact things we're going to track, whether, when you're picking KPIs or different, things that you're doing. And I think that's one of the things where I feel like I've gotten burned is like, here's what we talked about. Here's what's here. It's supposed to be, one of these, two of these, one of those, whatever. Or we're doing your advertising and then everything just kind of slowly is just like, I didn't get my weekly report and I'm asking for the weekly report and I still don't get it. And then I didn't get this or they didn't do the edits.
Because they don't have systems in place.
and so it just rolls. But no matter what work they did, oh, sorry, my aunt was sick and it's like, okay, that's fine. But then are you giving me part of my money back? And that's the part where I feel like a lot of this stuff, particularly with marketing, and I think that's why I feel so burned with it, is set up on these retainers. And it's like, you just got to pay them to be, because they're important enough that like, if you want to be a part of their world, this is what you do. And then they don't deliver what they said they were going to do. So then you end up parting ways with, not really good taste in your mouth. And then you got to start over again.
And you get burnt, and that happens over and over and over again.
And that's why, I'm not the only person. And the reason we're talking about this inside the marketing, like there's people out there that like, that's all they do is help you pick marketing agencies because so many of them suck. And so I just think that's where like I listened at a chamber event not too long ago, and the kid stood up, and it was a younger guy. Sorry, I shouldn't call him a kid. A young man stood up and he was saying they're starting to do their contracts by deliverables. Like, we're going to get these results for you, or you don't pay us until we get to this result kind of thing. And I think that's where, I'd love to see that happen a little more often.
Yeah. And I think in particular in the marketing world, we could go down this rabbit hole for hours. And I've been on both sides of it. That's why we do CMO work in marketing, because it's hard to put that into a contract, right? Deliverables. And so you have to be really crystal clear with it. And there's marketing that can give you a deliverable, and there's marketing or advertising or branding that you're never going to be able to track it. You're just not. And so I think one of the reasons that I started doing additional things other than just marketing and advertising is because there's such a need for education on what's right for your business. And that is when I hear I can tell you so many stories, and you could probably talk about them too, of people that were working with somebody that really didn't have their best interest in heart. It was about their product that they were selling. And so they sold the product, or they sold the package, or whatever it is. And they don't really care about the results because they know they're going to leave in 6 months. So they're just going to find another person in 6 months. And that is their business model. And that is a terrible business model. Yeah. It is not effective. And I have said to so many people, in fact, a client that we're working with right now, that actually wanted to do advertising. And I had to say, that's great, because I still have 2 magazines I publish. They're awesome, but that's not right for you with what you're trying to accomplish right now. And most people don't have that conversation. They're just like, sure, okay, I'll take your money.
Yeah.
And that's a scary world. And I think the whole thing goes back to trust and knowing what you're looking for, being crystal clear with what you're looking for, and then finding the people that are going to help guide you to the right decision for your business.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that, while we were just talking, that's kind of bringing me back to the foundation, is one of the things just out of these frustrations and experiences that I've had personally is looking at, like, how can I make the biggest impact for women in their business through the foundation? And so one of the things that we talk about is providing these resources that, like, as a small business owner, whether you're, a solopreneur or somebody with a few, employees, but you still are a smaller business, being able to kind of pool some of these things together. So finding these resources that work, and then kind of like adding it at scale, if you will, but over a course of these, or spread out over these few businesses. Yeah. So really looking at, like, pulling in a couple of businesses, doing the highlight, but then now going back and saying, okay, now I'm supporting these. Right. They all kind of fit into this same little, like, lifestyle bucket of, wine and hospitality and food. And so you can kind of see how to put those together, and then now be able to use that as a bigger voice to go back and say, okay, now I need some PR, I need some marketing, I need this, and really being able to leverage that for women as they start these small businesses. So
I love what you're doing. And, the failing as you've transitioned, feeling like you've had failure moments is part of growing. It's just part of the business. And you get better and stronger every time you do it. And you've had such success in the past. It's crazy to think that imposter syndrome could ever creep in on us, right? But it still always does. And I want to highlight for listeners the point of just getting involved and plugging into the community and surrounding yourself with people that are going to help you rise to the top and encourage you, and also are like-minded, that think about people the same way and think about business the same way. And you're able to do that. But I want to hear from your perspective, as we kind of let listeners wrap this episode up, somebody who is has changed their location recently as a business owner, what advice would you give them?
I think really just kind of what I did this year is just really get out there. Like, don't be shy. Don't stay home. Don't do any of that part, but just really, join. Like, I started to join the chamber, and then I was too busy, unquote, to do something. So then it's like, then I joined the chamber, then I joined BNI, then I joined, different things. And I think really just getting back out there and really starting to build that community. Yeah. And I think no matter what your business is, right, you still need the people. Yep. And really having the relationships. I think you touched on that. Yeah. At the beginning really is just even for your person, for your spirit and your individuality, you need to, be making connections with people. And I think that's so important. And one of the reasons, like, people who sell wine and food and work in hospitality don't do it because they just sit at home and eat all the time or drink all the time. You do it because it's a social thing. Yeah. And so really just, building that community, I think is really important.
Go find your community, get intentional, find your people, put yourself out there. And I think another tip with that is you're going to find situations and people that you're like, this is not my group. This is not my cup of tea. These are not my people. And that's okay. That is a learning experience. It is, okay, what did I learn from that? I don't want to be in this kind of setting anymore. I don't want to walk into that room again. Or maybe it's, I don't feel confident enough to walk into that room, so I need to go do some work on me before I walk back into that space again, right? Because I've been there as a business owner. I think talking about the space of getting out and talking to people, you can I personally have walked into places and been like, I don't feel like I belong here, whether it's, whatever the reason may be, because as women, we have our own little battles in the business world because we are usually the minority in most of those spaces, depending on which one we are in. But just figuring out what spaces benefit your business and your lifestyle and your personality, and where do you feel like you fit in? And those are your people. And that's one of the reasons I stay in our BNI group, because those are like-minded people. And it is such a different culture than other BNI groups that I have been to. And not that this is an advertisement for BNI, but we're in the same group. And so I know that's a huge part of our business locally. We're both very involved in local business. So great advice for listeners. Laura, I'm so happy to be a part of your journey and share your wine.
Yeah.
And that you share your wine with me. And I love all that you're doing. I'm excited to see what's coming. Thank you for listening to the Lindsay Stafford Show today. We talked to Laura at Bell and Bottle. Check her out. All this will be in the show notes too, the links and all of that. But the wine is phenomenal. I've tried several different versions of it, maybe all on one night. Tastings. But we are so grateful that you tuned in today. Like, listen, share, review. Send this to somebody else that you think might benefit from this. That helps us out a lot. Thanks for listening.